Everyone, call this to order. It is 6:30. The town of Smithers acknowledges the Gidim Den clan and the Wet'suwet'en people on whose unceded traditional territory we live, work, and play. The public is notified the meeting is being recorded and webcast, a notice of which is on the bulletin board outside these chambers. And council, you have an agenda. I'm just going to make a couple of changes with your approval. One is you have a supplementary, and with your consent, we'll move 19.1 to 16.2 so that it's attached to the bylaw. And we will remove report 14.8. So if you're in agreement with that, I'll take a mover and a seconder. Councillor Ray, Councillor Patterson. Any other discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried. Ms. Mendel, you're okay with that? You got that? Okay, and I think we'll just keep going. All righty. First up, we don't have a petition or a delegation, but we do have the public comment period. And this is an opportunity for anyone in the gallery to speak to any item that is on the agenda. And you have a 3-minute speaking window if you like. And if it's something you'd like to speak to, I invite you to the delegation table. Okay. Then we'll move on. First up, we got a lot of things for me to read, so you're going to get used to me reading tonight. First up, 7.1, we have a public hearing for BV Brewery for a liquor license amendment application. So bear with me. This public hearing is convened in accordance with the Liquor Control and Licensing Act and the Town of Smithers Liquor and Cannabis Licensing Policy. This hearing is an opportunity for the public to make representations to council regarding the application by Bulkley Valley Brewery to the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch to amend its liquor primary license to allow a permanent outdoor patio. Those present who believe that your interest is affected by the proposed application shall be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard. None of you will be discouraged or prevented from making your views known. However, it is important that you restrict your remarks to matters related to the proposed liquor license application. When speaking, please commence your remarks by clearly stating your name and address. Members of council may, if they so wish, ask questions of you following your presentation. However, the function of council at this public hearing is to listen rather than to debate the merits of the liquor license application. After this hearing is concluded, council may, without further notice, give whatever effect council believes proper to the representations made at this hearing. And I'll just ask, are there any letters received related to this? I haven't seen any.
None.
Thank you. And at this point, I'm going to call 3 times. So if anyone would like to speak or make a submission to this public hearing, I invite you to do so. I'm going to call a second time. If anyone would like to make a submission, I invite you to do so. And for a third and final time, if anyone would like to make a submission, I invite you to do so. Seeing none, I'm going to declare this public hearing regarding the BV Brewery application to the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch closed at 6:34. And it might seem funny, but it is a public hearing, so I have to actually go through all of that, and we have a second public hearing. So bear with me again. So we are now at item 7.2. This public hearing is convened in accordance with the Local Government Act to allow the public to make representations to council regarding the proposed bylaw. There is one bylaw to be considered at this public hearing. Bylaw number 1977 consists of text amendments in the zoning bylaw for compliance with the province's Short-Term Rental Accommodation Act. There are a couple of procedural points I need to review. Anyone of you present who believes your interest to be affected by the proposed bylaw will be given an opportunity to be heard. No one will be discouraged or prevented from making their views known. However, restrict your comments to the contents of the proposed bylaw. If you would like to speak, come to the delegation table and begin by stating your name and address. Members of council may ask questions following your presentation. However, the function of council at this public hearing is to listen rather than to debate the merits of the proposed bylaw. After the public hearing is closed, council may, without further notice, adopt or defeat the bylaw or alter it and then adopt the bylaw. Council's discussion regarding this proposed bylaw will occur under section 16 of this evening's agenda. At this point, I'll call for submissions and I will note any letters received. Ms. Smith?
There were no further submissions, Your Worship.
We do have the one letter from Mr. Mitchell, or is that to the other one? No, that's this one. Okay, so we do have the one letter in support, and it's a part of the agenda package. So I will now invite if anyone wants to make a presentation to this public hearing. Again, I'll call 2 more times. If anyone would like to make a submission, I invite you to do so now. And for the 3rd and final time, if anyone would like to speak, I'll call you forward. Seeing none, I will declare the public hearing for bylaw 1977 closed at 6:36 p.m. One more. We are creating a public opportunity to speak in association with bylaw number 1978. We aren't required to hold a public hearing, but to provide the public speaking opportunity. So this is bylaw number 1978, the Town of Smithers Business License Bylaw number 1850, amendment number 24-02. The purpose of bylaw 1978 is to establish comprehensive short-term rental regulatory framework for the town, aligning with the intent of the recently enacted short-term rental accommodation legislation. Once adopted, all the STR operations in town, including bed and breakfast operations, must operate in compliance with the new business licensing requirements. Those present who believe your interest in property is affected by the proposed bylaw are provided this opportunity to be heard. And if there's anyone who would like to speak to it, I invite you forward. Okay. And that doesn't need to be closed at a time because it is just a public speaking. Alrighty, council, that was a lot of reading. It'll be soon your time to talk. Okay, and we are at item 8.1 and we have minutes from September 24th. Motion to approve, please. Councillor Leonard, Councillor Raven. Oops, any discussion, errors, omissions? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried. There's no items to release and no business arising, so we're at council reports. First up, Councillor Buikema.
Thank you, Mayor Atchell. Sorry, I didn't get this in written fashion, but most of the things I attended were after the deadline for submissions. September 26th, I attended a meeting with the chamber along with several other members of council. And during that evening, the chamber had opportunity to share with council some of the challenges they have in running the visitor center. And I think it was important that they had that opportunity. On September 27th, I attended the Truth and Reconciliation event at the town and the showing of the Shared History film. Found it just a very moving event. I want to thank the town for taking time to do that. At the end of the showing too, there was a member of town staff too who did some sharing about someone in her family who had been affected by past history in Smithers, and I found that very, very moving as well. On Saturday, October 5th, I joined Smithers Climate Action Group for some tree planting, and I must confess it was rather therapeutic sticking some trees in the ground. And I just want to thank them for the good work they do in our community. We planted quite a number of trees along Railway Avenue. Also on October 5th, I attended the candidating event at the library. And even though I didn't participate that actively myself, I could tell it was a very worthwhile hour and a half. And this afternoon, I attended the regular monthly meeting of the Chamber of Commerce. And that's it for my report. Thanks, Mayor Attrell.
Thanks, Councillor Buikema. Councillor Elliott.
I have one thing to report. I also attended the meeting with the Smithers Chamber of Commerce, and that is all I have to add to this. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Elliott. Councillor Leonard.
Nothing to report.
Thank you, Councillor. Oh my gosh, I forgot to welcome you back officially. It's my moment. I've spoken so much, but welcome back, Councillor Patterson. It's nice to have you at the table.
Thank you so much. And I don't actually have a report, but along those lines, I actually just wanted to thank this council. Obviously, you made a decision that wasn't just solely based on my taking time to obviously bond with my son and take care of him, but just to say that I know that his health and wellness, along with mine, wouldn't be in tip-top shape without your support. So just thank you very much. And for future generations who I know will feel the same. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Raven.
So I was able to distribute my written report. Apologies, Councillor Patterson. I didn't realize you were back tonight, so I didn't get a chance to do that, but I can email it if you'd like. So we had an accessibility meeting, and I will come back to that one because there is a recommendation for council. But that was on the 25th. And then on the 26th, I attended the health committee meeting. And a couple of the really good highlights from that is we actually had an upgrade to our CT scanner at BVDH. So the new software apparently makes it where they can see a lot finer details. So that was really, really good and just helps the health of our town as a whole. Also, there has been a significant improvement in the hiring of staff for the hospital. So we've actually seen a 27% reduction in nursing vacancies since January. So from January through to now in September. And we also have a respiratory therapist now based out of our hospital, and that has been extremely beneficial because that makes it where people are not having to fly and be medevac down to Vancouver. So I really wanted to highlight the work for attraction and retention of these very, very important people to serve the healthcare community. Then the other highlight I would like to do is September the 27th, I attended the Sacred Spaces Gala hosted by the Friendship Center Society. We had a speaker, Madeline McCallum, who came in, and full disclosure, I'd only planned on staying for not the entire event, but it was so incredibly riveting that I could not leave. There was laughter, lots of tears. It was truly an incredible event, and I'd like to thank the Friendship Center for hosting that. And then finally, on the 28th, there was a co-ed soccer tournament. So just a shout out to the Socceroos for claiming top spot and choosing the BV Youth Foundation as the recipient of the $1,500 for charity. And then so for the Accessibility Committee, the recommendation from the committee is that council incorporate an accessibility filter on future community infrastructure enhancement and development plans at the onset.
Thanks, Councillor Raven. I think we can do this in two pieces. First, we can move approval of the minutes. So let's have that motion
Okay,
first.
perfect. Yep,
You move?
I move.
Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Buikema. Okay, so just to the committee minutes, all in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried. Okay, and the motion, now I've lost it, okay. And so Councillor Raven, you're going to move that to council?
Yes, I am.
Okay, is there a seconder? Councillor Buikema seconds. Okay, discussion. Do you want to give us some background?
Yep. So just the background is the Parks and Recs master plan concerns were brought forward. So when council approved that, there were some people that had commented that they didn't feel that there was an accessibility lens, like there was some concerns about the specifics of the project. So it turned into quite a bit of a roundtable discussion where it was explained that that particular plan was very high level. So it's not the nitty gritty, where's the parking spaces, where's the trees, where's the sidewalk, but more broadly. And the concern was raised is that by not having an accessibility lens or not seeming to have an accessibility lens from the beginning, that we're kind of setting it up for failure, because then we're relying on each piece to have that accessibility lens brought to it. So they just really wanted to reiterate how important it was to have accessibility from the beginning.
Thanks, Counselor Raven. Counselor Ray.
Well, for that particular project, there was actually a representative and it was brought up several times. So I'm a little surprised by that. But just speaking to the motion in general, I'm not going to move it, but I'm thinking referring it to strategic priorities because I don't really know what it means in terms of work for staff. I think we try very hard to think about accessibility, but I don't know how the staff would take this motion and what kind of work it would add. You know, that sounds very callous and uncaring, but we do have staff capacity issues. We always do. So I wanted to kind of hear from staff about how that was going to affect them.
Thanks, Counselor Ray. I can look to Mr. Durr. I don't know that I would expect a staff response right now. So if you want, I'm sort of rolling through process in my mind. In order always is a motion to postpone or defer until staff have an opportunity to bring it back. If we want to, that may not be where this goes, but that would be an option forward. While that's being considered, does anyone else have comments? Then I'll just add mine right now. I think the essence of what's being recommended, I can support. I was the person a couple of terms ago who asked staff to look at everything through an accessibility lens. And we had, actually, I don't even know if it's still in the reports. It was on the reports for the longest time that staff would sort of reflect were there any accessibility issues with this. Sometimes there were, sometimes there weren't. We had an environmental lens for as well as, you know, just things that we were asking people to consider. So I'm certainly not opposed to the concept. I think because I'm also not clear exactly what an accessibility filter is, that it's probably not bad to get a bit of an interpretation. I was at that particular meeting and the conversation was pretty serious, I would have to say. So I'd be hard pressed to vote against it. I'd be easy with going along with letting staff take a look at it and see if there's something there that we could do that is sensible. And I'll leave it at that and see. I'll wait a second and see what happens and then we'll vote. Councilor Ray.
I'll move we refer this motion to the Standing Committee on Strategic Priorities.
Is there a seconder? Councilor Buckham seconds. Sorry, that was a motion to refer. Is that what you said? Okay. I think in that case, there can be discussion. Someone can correct me if my procedure is off, but if there's any discussion, let's have it and I'll wait for the points of order if I'm wrong. Councilor Leonard.
You know, I'm with you, Mayor Attrell. I think maybe just the wording is a bit vague for me. And I certainly do support us looking at things from an accessibility lens. But I do support referring it to strategic priorities.
All righty, thanks, Councilor Leonard. Okay. We're voting on Councilor Ray's motion. All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. And if I haven't mucked up process, I think that takes care of the previous motion and it's put off until it comes back. Okay, we're getting nods. Good. Process is holding. Councilor Raven, anything else from you? Councilor Ray.
Yeah, just off the top of my head, the meeting with the chamber was very illuminating on several fronts. One of the things I wanted to mention that is how much the community looks to the chamber to do things that maybe, I don't know, are always traditionally chamber roles. Chamber plays a pretty big role in our community with events. Tonight, they're having the All Candidates Forum. Is that really a chamber responsibility? I'm not sure, but they've gladly taken it on. But the chamber is a small organization. And I think that I just wanted to put my appreciation out there for all that they do. And then secondly, I attended the regional district on Mayor Attrell's behalf and may have some insight into one of the later items on transit.
Thanks, Councilor Ray, and thanks for doing that. My report's there. I can take questions. if there are any, maybe the only thing I'd add, because it was just yesterday, so I did this report in anticipation that I would attend the Northern Health meeting, and I did. And it was pretty illuminating. The Northern Health does this twice a year, once in person, once virtually. So this was an in-person meeting, and it's all the hospital districts from the region that get together. The morning is spent discussing capital. And there will be a distribution of material that is public facing at some point, and I'll share it with you when I get it. But it's a bit jaw-dropping really when one thinks of what the capital looks like. So it's, you know, the hospitals, including Mills, including the University Hospital, including Fort St. John, and then it's every piece of equipment over $100,000, and in a medical facility, a lot of them are over $100,000, and these old buildings that need renovation, you know, to incorporate new standards. We feel that at our table, there's a new standard set, and we simply have to rise to it. It's extraordinary in healthcare, all the different agencies that are setting standards for pharmacy, for all kinds of things. And a hospital renovation to incorporate one of these could be, you know, a couple of $1 million to incorporate the installation of a single piece of equipment. So it was, you know, I thought I might not be able to keep my eyes open during the capital portion because it's so much, but it is extraordinary what is being spent on healthcare. And it really, you know, makes me pause. How are we going to get through it all? We struggle with what we've got at our table. Thank goodness it's broken into the regional hospital districts, because we can, you know, hone it down to at least what's in our area. So it was very interesting. In the afternoon, talked a lot about health more broadly, with a section on the social determinants of health, the determinants of health, and was interesting to just be reminded of things like road distance. This part of the world, Northern Health has an increased level of smoking over other parts of the province, an increased level of drinking over other parts of the province, longer transportation. So it was things that actually make a difference. And the regional health officer, Dr. Kim, said, you know, and some of them are, you know, if you have a heart attack and you're several hours from a hospital, that might actually be the determinant that allows you to survive or not. And that's just the life we live. There's no change to be made there, but it was an interesting sort of presentation to hear. So I wasn't sure I would really love the meeting, but it was extraordinarily interesting, and I'm glad I went. And I'll leave it there, unless there were questions about anything else. Okay. In that case, we are up to staff reports. First one, 14.1, we have a report from Mr. Dewar regarding the RBA funding agreement and a couple of bullets in the recommendation. Anything you wanted to add, Mr. Dewar? Someone would like to put the motion on the floor. Councillor Ray, Councillor Raven, any discussion? I asked Mr. Dewar about it earlier, and he said, you have to pass this if you want the money. So I think we should pass it. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, we're good. Second is a report from Ms. LeBlanc on recommending an award of a contract to refresh the tourism, or not the tourism, excuse me, the town brand. You can tell where my head lies sometimes. Anyone want to put it on the? Councillor Elliott, Councillor Raven. Discussion? Anything staff want to add? All right, all in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried unanimously. 14.3, report from Ms. Lucier on a letter of support request from the Cane Island Trail Enhancement and Recreation Society. Councillor Buikema, Councillor Ray, that's to
I'll
support.
move the staff recommendation.
Councillor Ray seconds. Any discussion? I just wanted to know, oh, Councillor Patterson, go ahead.
Sorry, Your Worship, did you say the Northwest BC regional funding? Is that where?
No, we're at 14.3.
Okay.
The Cane Island one.
Okay.
The only comment I was going to make is I like the generosity of spirit in this, where an organization is looking to be inclusive of a bigger part of the province. So,
I just had one question. Sorry, Your Worship.
yeah, okay. Go ahead.
Just finding my feet coming back. The only question I had was there was no reference to their engagement with First Nations, so not in the report, not on their webpage or their 2017 official plan. So they have a list of stakeholders, like including provincial governments, industry, etc. So my only concern was that the extensiveness of their trail and how many sort of thousands of kilometers that they would like to advance, and just being in contravention with the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. So I have a motion for consideration on seeking clarity, but I just wanted to say that I would be voting against it. Just there was no clarity in their plan for consultation or engagement.
Okay, we got a motion on the floor, so we'll deal with the motion that's there. Any further comments? I'm gonna call the vote. All in favor with the letter? Any opposed? And that passes with Counselor Patterson opposed. So I'm thinking we're good, the matter is dealt with unless you have something follow up, but I mean, the motion is passed now, Counselor Patterson.
So the motion that I would have is that council direct staff to respond to is it Cayenne? Island Trail Enhancement Recreation Society, seeking clarity on their approach to First Nations consultation and engagement.
Thanks, Counselor Patterson. Did you make that in the form of a motion?
Yes.
Okay, is there a seconder before we go on? Counselor Raven is seconding. I just have a question on practicality because I
Mhm.
can't think of another word right now. And just the investment in time by our staff to deal with this. I'm just casting that back to you if you have any thoughts on that, since we've already offered the letter of support. While you're thinking, I can go to Counselor Buckham who put his hand up.
I'm just wondering if our letter of support could include an encouragement to have some First Nations consultation.
Thanks, Counselor Buckham. Counselor Ray.
My assumption would be that if it's connecting to the Trans-Canada Trail, that there would already be a requirement in place. I can't believe it. I don't think that they would have built the Trans-Canada Trail without consulting First Nations.
Thanks, Counselor Ray. Counselor Raven, then I'll go back to Counselor Patterson.
To echo what Councillor Buchan said, I don't think it hurts to have in that letter just an encouragement to pursue or continue talks with Indigenous communities. I think that shouldn't add too much work to staff, and just be as simple as a sentence.
Thanks, Counselor Raven. Back to you, Counselor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So thinking about now that I've made the motion, I was thinking of it could be in the same letter. So if that's not clear, happy to vote it down and or amend it but I guess I just wanted to provide clarity that the reason why I made that is that the reason why I voted against it is that you wouldn't want to write a letter of support that was in contravention with any piece of legislation. I would hope there's risks associated with that. So I guess I wouldn't seek to put in the letter that we would encourage them to do it. It's not up to us to do that. It's law. So I guess I'm just happy to maybe even rescind that motion and just go on record to say that I voted against it.
Okay, we got a lot going on now. Ms. Smith.
Your options would be to withdraw the motion, which would include yourself and Counselor Raven, or you may amend your motion.
Thanks, Ms. Smith.
I'm happy to withdraw it.
Okay,
Thank
to the seconder. Okay, motion is withdrawn. Thanks, folks. Thanks, Ms. Smith. Okay, in that case, I'm going on to 14.4, and we have a report from Ms. Lucier on the Smithers Steelheads and the Center Ice logo request with the recommendation. Counselor Raven. Counselor Raven moves. Seconder. Counselor Elliott. Discussion. Counselor Ray.
I was just wondering if it would be helpful to staff if the advertising hasn't been gotten to by next year, that we pre-approve this doing it, so they don't have, because I fully support them having gone ahead and done it, because council's always supported in the past. We wanted to see the advertising potential there, but if the report isn't done by next year, would it help staff for us to just say we approve it next year if it isn't done?
Mr. Dewar? He's nodding yes. Counselor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I had the same comment as Counselor Ray, in that why could we not even just blanket approval it indefinitely? Like, I was just curious, why does it continue to come back to council?
Well, one reason is that we're trying to come up with a policy or a broader way to deal with marketing and signs and all of that with our recreation facilities. So this one is kind of looping through ahead of that. So at some point we will get a staff report making recommendations. And if my memory is right, it'll include like marks on the Zamboni, the signs in the arena. I saw Mr. George nodding. Am I kind of in the right ballpark with this? So we're expecting that report, and this one is just in advance of that report coming in. So I think in the future, this would actually be reflected with the recommendations in that staff report. Counselor Patterson.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, and I understood that. I guess I was just thinking more around the permanency of Steelhead within the community and thinking that even if we were going to do that, that we could have that conversation later, I guess. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. So I don't know if you need a motion specific to the, like what Counselor Ray had said, but I'd be willing to.
My reaction is no, but excuse me, Ms. Smith,
We do have a motion on the table.
that. Okay, so Counselor Ray and Counselor Raven.
I'll move that we amend the motion and that council approves the installation for the 2025-2026 season if an advertising policy has not been brought forth.
Counselor Ray moves the amendment. Ms. Mendel, are you okay with it?
I barely got it out of my skull. I can try again, or I can go over it with you after if you would.
The intention, just to see if I've captured the intention, is that should that policy not be complete, that we're pre-approving this one thing, this one time in time for the next season. I'm just going to get a seconder and then I'll get staff if there's a seconder. Counselor Raven seconds, Mr. George.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think that's helpful for staff to have. We plan on bringing forward the advertising agreement for all town facilities ahead of that, but this just safeguards us in case there's hiccups in that. So
Thank you. Okay, I feel like there were other hands. Any other staff comments? Okay, to the amendment. And we have a concept for the amendment. Is that, oh, Mr. Dewar, go ahead.
I believe the wording that was used was, and that the logo be approved for the 2025 and 2026 ice season if an advertising policy is not approved before then.
Counselor Ray, you're nodding your approval. Ms. Mendel? Okay. To the amendment. I don't think we voted on that. All in favor? Any opposed? Amendment carries to the motion, the new motion, the changed motion. Any further discussion? Counselor Raven.
Sorry, shameless plug, Steelhead's home openers on the 12th. Just putting it out
Okay,
there.
we're not going to do that. Just saying. We're going to stick to the motions. All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Okay, stick with me, council. Alrighty, 14.5, report from Mr. George with a recommendation that we approve providing free transit for the BC election October 19th. And there's some background there. Anyone want to put that on the floor? Counselor Ray, Counselor Patterson. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried. Okay. 14.6, report from Mr. George on the joint use facility agreement with School District 54. 2 recommendations. Counselor Ray, Counselor Patterson. Any discussion? Counselor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. A quick question, just reading on page 2, where it talks about to each organization for facility usage, for example, something like a hockey academy. And I was just curious, do we know how much revenue is being generated by the school districts during these types of events? So I'm just curious, like, is the cost sharing equitable? I'm treading lightly because I realize we're talking about the education system. But when I was reading that there could be potential cost savings to the town, and I look about around 10K annually or fiscally, knowing how much something like Hockey Academy could generate. I'm just curious if staff might be able to comment on that. Thank you.
Mr. George.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Patterson. We didn't provide those numbers because we're not sure for the full numbers, both from the town's use of school district facilities as well as the full breakdown for the school district to use the arenas. The school district in previous years have been under the 200 max hours allocated in previous years. So this would be a hour exchange, staying within the 200 hours. And this would be a pilot project for 1 year to understand the full use between the two organizations. And then a larger long-term agreement would be coming forward to council next year.
Thanks, Mr. George. Mr. Dewar.
Just to build on that, and I may have missed the intent of the question, but additionally, we did check with the school district. And so programs such as the hockey academy, they're not meant for revenue generations for them. So it's they're running it at their costs or thereabouts is what we've been told.
Councillor Ray.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see this. I was there when the last one kind of collapsed on us. To me, the people that are paying for the schools facilities are the same people that are paying for the town's facilities. So it's a matter of whether it's coming out of their left pocket or the right pocket. And it makes the most sense for us to not be renting other facilities when we can use things that we've all paid for to keep costs down.
Thanks, Councillor Ray. I agree. I was around then too, and kudos to staff for bringing us along in this relationship building. Good work. We appreciate it. Any other comments? All in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried. 14.7, we have the report from Ms. Chandran on the liquor license application amendment that the hearing was about earlier with the recommendation. I saw Councillor Patterson, Councillor Raven, and that's both. Okay, discussion. Not seeing any. We kind of discussed this at our last meeting. All in favor? Any opposed? And that is carried unanimously. So moving on, next up is staff report. 15.1 from Ms. Westberg, just on the vacancies. According to policy. Any comments? Okay, and report 15.2 from Mr. Herzog for information on moving the airplane. I can't help but ask how, but I don't need to know how. It is the thing that occurs to me though. You're smiling, but not telling. Okay. It's fine. Go ahead, Mr. Dewar.
I think the intention will be to truck it.
All right.
We were hoping for a helicopter too.
Okay. All right. Can't fly it. That's right. All righty. And okay, we are up to bylaws. 16.1. So this is bylaw 1977, and this is the zoning amendment bylaw. And it is in front of us for third reading. A motion for third, Councillor Patterson, Councillor Raven. Any discussion? Councillor Bucuma.
I must confess that since the open houses were held and since we had conversations surrounding all the short-term rental legislation, I personally have been struggling with it a fair bit, partly because of conversations I'm having with residents in town as well. I don't claim to fully understand the short-term rental policies that are in front of us. I think I have a reasonable grasp of them. I know the intent is to hopefully increase housing supply or the supply of long-term rentals, and also to ensure the owner of a short-term rental is physically present wherever the short-term rental is. I guess my struggles are as follows. I feel like short-term rentals play a really valuable role in our community. I think they're really important to tourism. When hotels are full or too expensive, I feel like short-term rentals have a very important role to play. I know there are also people who come in larger groups to Smithers and don't want to stay in separate hotel rooms, but would prefer to share a house. I'm also not personally convinced that somebody who owns a building that is presently an STR is going to convert it into a long-term rental, because there are a lot of challenges to long-term rentals that don't exist with short-term ones. I know, especially in terms of long-term rentals, often the pressure on a landlord is to keep rent increases small while other costs go up considerably. I also feel for people who bought properties in this town with the intention of turning them into short-term rentals, or they already are, and now it's much more difficult to do so. However, in saying all that, I do support the notion that we do not want to have people in Vancouver or who knows where owning STRs and Smithers, but I am personally comfortable with someone in our community living in one part of town and owning an STR in a different part of the town, because in a sense, they are still overseeing the property. So I guess to make a long story short, I'm struggling with supporting all the STR bylaws. So I'm probably going to be a no vote tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bucama. Okay, let me just, I'll capture my hands. I just thought I would look to staff if there's anything to add for clarity before I move on to the rest of councillors, and it's fine if there isn't. Okay, I had Councillor Ray, then Councillor Raven.
Yeah, I think the important thing to remember is that this wasn't driven by our staff. It was driven by the province. We're trying to make the best and to make it as fair as we can. Some of the things that you mentioned are outside of our control. I would have liked to have seen some kind of grandfather clause for somebody that already owned one. That's out of the question. Province won't allow it. And I think, you know, the staff heard from the residents of the town. There's nobody here to comment on the bylaw, so I'm assuming that staff made the best of a kind of a difficult situation, and I really do believe they listened to the concerns that were brought to them. Of course, not every concern is going to be answered with what you're looking for, but I think this is a good compromise. And you know, a bylaw, if it really isn't working for some reason, can always be changed. And that's not the greatest answer in the world, but again, this was thrust upon us. It wasn't something that we chose to do. And just the last thing, I think, you know, you're saying somebody else in town. I think if they live elsewhere in town, they're still overseeing. I think the idea is that you're not suffering, but you're feeling the same effects that your neighbors are feeling. If you're personally there and your tenants in the short-term rental are having a great big party, you're right there to shut it down because you know what's happening. So I think that's the intent behind that. And again, you know, hopefully this all works out for the best.
Thanks, Councillor Ray. Councillor Raven.
So I definitely understand some of the pieces that you're bringing forward, but I also want to really mention, so especially for like the single detached homes. So to me, when you look at zoning of a community, you have residential, you have commercial, you have hotel. And to me, when you have a single detached residential house, my thought is that the intent is to have people living in the community in that single detached residential. So when it's an entire house that's been taken away for short-term rentals, to me, that's taking away from our current housing stock. I fully support that they can still have the secondary suites. It could be a carriage house that can still be short-term rental. But when I look at a house, I think that should be a home for somebody that's living and working in our community. And we know how dire our housing shortage is. I have talked to some people that did have short-term rentals that have actually converted prior to our bylaw coming in, when they just heard it was coming down the pipe. They just listed it and they got tenants in. And so it has actually opened up some stock just from talking to people. And I remember from the hotel and motel outreach is there are certain times of years where the owners of our local hotels and motels specifically said that it impacts their business. So, and it's, I know it's ebb and flow and it's not a perfect answer, but we're also not getting rid of STRs completely. They're still going to be the downtown core. You're still be able to have the professionals come in for shorter terms. So, I mean, it's not a perfect solution, but I think that we've struck a really good balance with being fair, because we could have said just no more STRs completely. So I think we've done, and one staff have done a good job bringing it forward as is a fair bylaw for this.
Thanks, Councillor Raven. Councillor Elliott.
Just a quick word. I share concerns with making rules about this, but I think one point you hit on was, would this increase housing? I think it will. I think if the people who aren't living in the house or aren't residents, they wouldn't want to go long-term rentals. If it was me, I would just sell it. And I think that's where we'll see maybe the benefit. And I'm not saying people will want to do that, but I think if they have a mortgage on a home that they're not living in and they don't want to rent it long-term, you'll see more sales, more housing supply, and more homes for my own children to live in, not just to rent. So I think that is still a thing that young people around here maybe strive to, is home ownership and not just renting. Whereas you'll see more urban areas, maybe that's the case, but I think here I support it too, so.
Thanks, Councillor Elliott. Any others? Okay, and I feel like I have actually lost the bouncing ball. So we are at bylaw 1977. And there was a motion for third. Is that where we're at? Okay, great. Thank you. Any further comments on that third reading bylaw 1977? All in favor? Opposed? The motion passes with Councillor Buckham opposed. And that one we leave there. Come back to us. So bylaw 1978, this is where we moved forward 19.1. And so we have an update to the staff report. And the first recommended motion is to rescind the third reading of bylaw 1978, bylaw amended 2402. Councillor Patterson. Councillor Raven. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? We're there. Sorry, Councillor Buckham, were you opposed? Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that. Councillor Buckham opposed. And second recommendation that we amend section 3.4 of the bylaw by replacing the second sentence with the language that you have in front of you. Once a license is issued, the STR B&B owner operator shall include the license number as a part of their STR B&B listing on various platforms. Some clarity there. Can someone put that on the floor? Councillor Raven. Was that you, Councillor Patterson? Okay. Discussion. All in favor? And opposed? You're fine with that? Okay, that's unanimous. And finally, that we now give third reading to bylaw 1978, Town of Smithers Business Bylaw 1850, Amendment 2402. Councillor Raven. Councillor Ray. Discussion. All in favor? Any opposed? And that's unanimous. Thanks, everyone. Lots of discussion and lots of kind of history that gets us to here. So thank you for that. Thanks to staff. So I think we're at 16.3. Permissive tax exemption, bylaw 1980, 2025 to 2027, with a couple of recommendations, and we're going to take them one at a time. If someone would like to move the first recommendation. Councillor Raven, and this is that we give the bylaw first, second and third. No, we're going to do those separately. One, that's first reading. All in favor? Any opposed? Yeah, I had one. We didn't have a seconder?
I'll second.
Counselor Patterson, sorry for that. Okay, first reading, no discussion, all in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. You were opposed? Okay, you guys are keeping me on my toes and I'm not really on my toes, so Counselor Elliott opposed. Okay, we're at second reading. Someone put that on the floor. Counselor Patterson, Counselor Raven, discussion, second reading, we get to talk.
I'm opposing because in the beginning, when we were going through this, I opposed taking this away. So this is why I'm opposing this bylaw.
Thanks, Counselor Elliott. Anyone else? Counselor Bikma.
Just a question for Mr. Allen. I just want to confirm that I'm pretty sure that it still exists, but I just want to make sure that the permissive tax exemption for places of worship still exist because it's come down from higher levels, and that the only thing that they're not exempt from is if they own additional property. So for instance, the church I attend, we own a fairly significant field beside our church. My understanding is that will be taxed, but the actual parking lot, house of worship itself will maintain its statutory exemption. Can you just confirm that for me?
I'm just going to cast that to Mr. Dewar, since I'm not sure that that's Mr. Allen's area of expertise. He's just sitting where we expect the Director of Finance to sit. That's all. Mr. Dewar.
My understanding is that primary activities associated with church activities, I guess, will or not or can or are not subject to it. However, anything used for ancillary purposes can be taxed.
Counselor Ray.
That was my understanding. Thank you.
And Counselor Ray wanted.
I
to
just
speak to
wanted
it.
to point out the difference between, they don't receive a permissive from the province, they receive a statutory. We're the ones that provide the permissive. And we're not going to anymore, so.
Thanks, Counselor Ray. Okay, but that is a good distinction. So those that are entitled to a statutory exemption, we don't have the authority to take that away. So all those remain in place. Counselor Ray.
Yeah, and just so council's aware, I've been talking to the curling club and they passed a letter along to me, which I'll pass along to Mr. Dewar. There are going to be groups that are concerned about this. We gave lots of notice and the curling club did acknowledge that, and they're looking at how their property is assessed first of all. So I'm kind of encouraged them to get that any objections or difficulties they were having going before tax season and not after the tax bills go out.
Thanks, Counselor Ray. Did I see a hand on this side? Okay. Recommendation number 1 is on the floor. All in favor? Sorry, Ms. Smith? That was for
Recommendation number
second.
2.
Pardon?
It's for recommendation number 2, second reading.
I think that was that we do second reading on the bylaw. Yes, yeah. So second reading. I'm just going to call the vote again. All in favor? And opposed? Carried with Counselor Elliott opposed. And third reading, Counselor Ray, Counselor Bukama. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? And that carries with Counselor Elliott opposed. Thanks, everyone. And that we have the second recommendation to rescind. Counselor Ray,
I'll move rescind.
Counselor Raven, motion to rescind finance policy 018. Any discussion? All in favor? And opposed? And that carries with Counselor Elliott opposed. Thank you.
It's a good Counselor Ray imitation.
Okay, we're through those. Thank you. Thanks, Ms. Smith. And we are at the 17th. So first up, we have a letter from Andrew and Donna Shibley. I'll just acknowledge Mr. Shibley is in the gallery. And a letter here to council regarding some paving and some concerns with costs. Maybe I'll just look first to staff if there's any comments you wanted to make. If not, it's okay. We're good. Okay, council. can start if you want. I think where we're at, and council can chime in, but we'll look, probably be sending this back to staff to get some comment and feedback back to council on this. So it's not a short answer in terms of an immediate response to the writers. Yeah, maybe I'll just hold it there for now and see if other councillors want to comment. And at some point, I'll look for a recommendation to refer this back to staff, both in terms of response to the author of the letter and to how we may go forward in terms of local area service agreements going forward and greater discussions on pavement. Councillor Ray.
Yeah, I think it's appropriate to comment at this time on the first question that there hasn't been a sudden change in town street paving policies. If the town street local area service is to be amended or changed, it has to come through council.
Thanks, Councillor Ray. Okay, maybe I will just look to you for some sort of where you think this is going with staff.
Yeah, certainly staff can pull up with Mr. and Ms. Shibley. And then we can bring back future considerations at a future meeting.
Councillor Raven,
I'll make the motion to refer back to staff.
motion to refer to staff. Councillor Buchan seconds. Any further discussion? I'm just going to acknowledge that there was, something has happened here, and it's completely reasonable that there be a response back to our citizens. We have a way of doing things. It may well be changing in the future, but at this point, I think council's going to seek some direction as well from staff on how we might address this in the future. But just acknowledge that, it's clear something happened and has caused a bit of angst for some of our citizens. So we take that seriously and will, through staff, make sure that there's a response, that whether or not a response is ever satisfactory, that there is a response back to the author. Any other comments before I call a question? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just one comment on recognizing that we've talked about asset management planning as a community and conversations potentially around consideration to how we manage those assets. And maybe one of those might be consideration for paving and conversations that we have in the future. So just to echo what you said, and I just look forward to broader conversations around paving of some of those areas that we see in our community. I do hear it from community members time and time again around why do we not pave those existing roads. So I know it's not sort of directly to the crux of this letter, but definitely connected in some way. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Patterson. Last glances. Motion is to refer back to staff and get a report back to us. All in favor? Any opposed? And that is carried unanimously. We have a letter from NCLGA, the North Central Local Government Association. Looking for feedback. I can just give you a little bit of an update because there was an NCLGA executive meeting today. So you can see the date on it. So feedback's been delivered. At this point, I think what will happen is we will get an updated version of the recommended accord seeking support. So if there's something there that you think is untoward, if you wanted to send some late feedback, I think that's probably okay. But at this point, they're already making some changes to the accord as we see it here. So I don't really see that any action is in particular required unless deeply desired by people at the table. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a comment, and that I was excited to see the contents of this because it made me think about our efforts at the Community Safety and Wellbeing Group when we're looking for other organizations who are deeply invested in similar efforts. So, for example, even the first action where they talk about information sharing and coordination, I'll absolutely be following up with yourself just to get a sense of how we might be able to take them up on their offer in sharing information and coordinating efforts. So I was just really thrilled to see this. Thank you.
Thanks. And I think the accord will have different signatories. I mean, representative of NCLGA likely, but other entities, absolutely. I'm sorry, was there a hand over here that I missed? Councillor Elliott.
Just a question about the process. So they're requesting feedback and seeking expression of interest. Do we have to write a letter to them, or is that something the mayor would do, contact them directly?
Well, again, I think it's like the timing just sort of missed. So I think the intention is to have a draft of the accord available at the symposium. And the intent would be to have signatories. There isn't a requirement for any in particular signatory. So my understanding from the conversation today is once the draft is redrafted, there will be a circulation, and if people want to sign on, they can add their name. There was a similar accord just signed in the Prince George region by the city of Prince George, by the Clately Tenay, and I can't remember another health, maybe it was Northern Health. So I think this is just sort of part of almost like a community movement to say this is an issue, like Councillor Patterson talked about it. And is there a way that we could maybe not formalize, but semi-formalize at least some information sharing and a way to keep each other informed in case, one entity finds a better way of doing things, that we wouldn't all be reinventing the wheel. That's sort of my summary of what I heard. But again, we missed the deadline. I'm sure they would take feedback, but in some ways it's being redrafted. Councillor Ray.
It's kind of a minor quibble, but at the same time, we affirm our dedication to working collaboratively, taking decisive action. The decisive action, I mean, if it's decisive that we're all going to collaboratively advocate, but we're not in a position to take actual action. Our only action from this accord is that we're going to present a united front, and I just don't like that, taking decisive action, because it sounds like we're taking it into our own hands, and we are not. I think it's a fairly good thing that we all go with a united voice, but we're not taking decisive action.
Is that in the form of a comment, or are you wanting something written back to them?
Wow, I don't even know if my opinion would be in the majority at this table, never mind all around NCLGA, but sometimes words matter. And if somebody picks this up and says, oh, they're going to take decisive action on mental health, that's not what we're actually going to do.
I'm just going to leave it at that point. I mean, if someone wants to make a motion, we'll hear it, and otherwise I'm just going to accept it as comment. Okay. And I think I am at, oh no, I missed something. I missed putting a little sticky on it. Okay, 17.3 from Volcano Chaco regarding transit. It's a tough one. Councillor Ray.
I just wanted to clear up something that seemed to be confusing the board a little bit. So there's two things in here that are actually not having to do with each other. One is that the Village of Telkwa is requesting to withdraw its participation from the service. The increase of the maximum taxation requisition from 90,000 to 115,000 is not actually because they're withdrawing. There is a financial, but it's the same as our Area A services. Just because they've increased the maximum doesn't mean we're going to tax for 115,000. It's just changing the bylaw so that they can in the future, because I think they're coming up against the 90,000. So it's just because they have the bylaw open, they're doing that proactively at the same time. I can't remember if this package, it does show a bit of the table that shows 2024 taxation with Telkwa and without Telkwa. But then this taxation that proposed the 115 maximum without Telkwa is just showing you if we finally got to that point where we're taxing for 115, this would be the shares of the communities. So we're not going to 115 at this time.
Thanks, Councillor Ray. It is, it was, I mean, I forgot that you were at the last meeting. The one before that was fairly difficult in that this whole subject has been difficult at the RD board. Trying to, like the rural transit, those longer transit routes, the community to community routes have been challenging. There have been conversations as well with the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, trying to figure out a different funding model. It's not there yet. There was an original move to move that 115 up to quite a bigger number to have more flexibility in going forward with the next couple of years. It wasn't successful. So this one's a struggle at the board, and there will have to be hard conversations between the board, its members, and other entities if we're going to have service on the highway going forward. It's, I think many of the rural directors feel that it's a challenge because their citizens are off the highway, and that this is a highway service. And there has to be some thinking about the value of providing a transportation that if people can get to the highway, they can still receive transport. And I mean, this has been my position at the board, that an option is no service. And I think that's something to be aware of and be cautious about. So the board found a way to continue this service with if one of the partners withdraws, and there was discussion of other partners withdrawing at different points as well. So it's just a hard one, and one that I think we should keep our eyes on. It feels to me that it was a service well needed. It's not perfect, but until we have actually figured our way through the transportation up and down the highway corridor, and there are others trying to do that, but it is a service, and not having the service, I think, is riskier. Anyway, there we go. Councilor Ray.
Yeah, and just to be entirely clear, this is the Smithers to Burns Lake route. Yes, so it's not our routes, which when I first read it, I was like, what? But no, that's so I will move that council give approval to RDBN's public transit and paratransit service establishment by amendment by law number 2055, 2024.
And a seconder, please. Councilor Raven seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried unanimously. I think that's it. I may have lost the bouncing ball on this one too. Okay, the 18s. Anything you want to pull out of there? I'm not seeing anything. Give you one last second here. All right, I think we're at that point. The motion to adjourn, please. Councillor Elliott, Councillor Raven, all in favor? Any opposed? Thanks, everyone.